Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm responding to a lot of questions I see on my videos asking for more detail on how I can afford everything that you see in my videos. We've got a 106-acre ranch here. We own everything completely outright. We have zero debt. We've got a 20-acre homestead here with a big barn and a solar power plant that powers everything that we do here, and we pretty much live a luxury lifestyle. We don't count kilowatts. All of that is, planned and sized specifically for our lifestyle here. We also own the adjacent properties that we purchased over time and converted them into rentals, which provides passive income. So today I'm going to give you the exact 5-step formula that I use to go from completely flat broke to financially independent and living debt-free on a 106-acre off-grid homestead. This isn't a get-rich-quick pitch, and I'm not selling anything. I'm not endorsed by anybody. I don't do product reviews. No one's paying me to do any of this. I'm just here because I want to share with you the things that I wish someone had shared with me when I was coming up. I mean, there was a time when I was living in my van in the streets of Pasadena. So, I've been at the bottom of the bottom, and now I've worked my way up to living, a luxury off-grid lifestyle, which is something that I always wanted to do. But it took me many, many years to figure this out. And I do think that with what's available to you today, you could do this much more quickly. But I'm going to share with you the 5 steps that I've used that are consistently proven to work. And I promise you, every single one of these steps is something that you can start working on today. If you're new here, my name is Brad, and my wife and I left the city to build this homestead from raw land, and now we live here full time. We run off-grid solar, we have multiple income producing properties, and I still work as a consultant. I'm a speaker, and I do that because I really enjoy it, not because I have to. But this channel covers everything it takes to build a life like this and to maintain it. We have, our solar power, heavy equipment, real estate, businesses, and the self-reliant mindset that it takes to keep all of this together. So a lot of you have asked me to go deeper on this financial side. How did I actually pull this off? So let me walk you through it today, step by step. The first step is to find your trade. It took me until I was 28 years old to find mine. And, at that point I was working low-skilled jobs, some of the worst stuff you can imagine. I drove, trucks, detailed cars, cleaned out sewers. I operated forklifts. I did construction cleanup. I even serviced those claw machines that pick up the toy at the grocery store and in bars. It's pretty dark side of my life. But it showed me that I do not want to be stuck doing this kind of shit for forever. So it gave me a lot of motivation to pull myself out of those, what I would consider darker times in my life. And it was probably 10 long years from when I graduated, moved to California, dead broke, lived in my van. I think minimum wage at that time was $4.85 an hour. 1988 is when I moved to California, when I landed here. It was like a moon landing, culture shock, no money. But I met this guy along the way that was doing this trade called window tinting. And it was something that I just thought was so cool, to be able to work on high-end cars and be in a shop with the music playing, seemed kind of fun. And he had, back then we had waterproof pagers. We didn't have cell phones. He would go out surfing with his waterproof pager. And then we were right on a coastal shop, and I was detailing cars, and he would go surfing, and we would page him. If the car came in, he would come and tint the car, and then he'd go back out and surf again. And he was making so much more money than I was in there all day, picking rocks out of tire treads. So I decided I wanted to learn that trade, and that's how the whole thing started. So one guy, I went hat in hand to every single tint shop in Orange County, California, and asked if they could use a helper. I was willing to do anything if they would teach me the trade. So one guy finally said, yeah, I can't find anybody that's got the skill to do this that's not a complete flake. I need someone reliable. So if you'll show up every day, help me clean out the van, sweep the floors, do all the things that, are not that fun to do, you're really going to help me out. And in exchange for that, I will teach you the trade. And he did. And here's the point. I wasn't born with the skill. I had to go out and acquire one. And you don't need a 4-year degree to do that. What you need is persistence and the willingness to be the low man on the totem pole so that you can learn something valuable. A few years later, I took those skills and started a one-man mobile tent shop. I had become proficient enough that I thought I could sort of start my own side gig. And he wasn't really treating me that well. He was hiring people around me, so to speak, and to, become managers of the company. And so I eventually said, look, I really appreciate everything, but I'm giving my 2 weeks notice. And I left, and I started going freelance to all other shops, went around and talked to everybody and said, hey, I'm 2 years experience. I'm really good. Give me a shot. If you need help, I'll come in. I'll help, and I would just go from shop to shop and do their sort of overspill work that their crews couldn't handle. And over time, I grew that from a one-man show into one of the largest window tinting companies in the nation. And we won a lot of awards. We installed a lot of film. I went from, my truck to a tiny garage to eventually having a storefront on a major corner. We became one of the busiest shops in Orange County. Everybody knew there was a tint shop there. We built sort of a legacy reputation. Then I parlayed that into luxury homes. We were installing window film for, energy efficiency, UV protection, and then we got into the big buildings, and that's when things really took off. And we started, lining up vans. We couldn't keep up with the demand because we were really responsive, great customer service, and none of that happened overnight, but it started with one decision, and that's to go learn something that people will pay for and then start building the business. Step 2 is buy the building. So we had been renting for years, and we were getting more and more cramped, and the landlord was kind of an a-hole. And, I said, look, I'm at this point now where I need to take some of this profit that I've been stowing away and saving, take it and make a big deposit on a larger building that we can grow into, because we're cramped in here. The air conditioner sucks, So that move terrified me. It was buying a commercial building was a pretty big deal. Now, rewind just a little bit. I did buy a house. I rented for years and years and years, and then I finally bought a small home, modest home. Fixed it up and made it worth a lot more. When I finally exited that home a few years ago, it was worth more than double what I paid for it. But I just wanted to side note there. When I bought the commercial building, I did already own the home and had been paying for that for probably 12 or 15 years by the time I bought the building. Now I owned 2 properties, and I wasn't sure we'd stay busy enough when I bought that commercial building to be able to pay the mortgage, but the opposite happened. It's like kind of repotting a plant. You put it into bigger soil, it has room for its roots to spread out, and it takes off. And that's what happened. Having a real location with a nice showroom, it attracted better clients. It allowed me to hire more talented people because they took us as being more legitimate. And we began to scale in ways that I never could have even imagined. There's no way I could have done that in some of these smaller buildings that we were renting. Think of it like this. If you're running a business out of your garage or renting a bay, you're paying someone else's mortgage and you have no equity to show for it. When you own your building, every payment in the beginning is going to go to the bank, in interest. But eventually, the interest goes down and the principal goes up, and you start building equity. And every payment builds your net worth instead of someone else's. And the bet paid off. The business thrived, and the building became sort of a launch pad for everything else that came next. Step 3 is refinance and buy land. So at this point, my business grew and the building was appreciating and I had equity. So the building was worth more than what I owed on it, and the difference is your equity. I refinanced the commercial property and I used the cash to buy my first 20 acres. So this was fortunate for me that I found a distressed a family who had lost whoever, their grandparents or whoever owned the land. And they were 3 siblings and they were arguing. They couldn't decide, anything. So they just liquidated everything, including this piece of land. So I was able to come in cash, win the bid. Basically, it was Johnny on the spot. I had cash. So as soon as it became available, we drove to Utah. We looked at it. We said, yeah, this is it. We've been looking in this area. And you may ask, why did I want to buy in Utah? And it's because the property taxes were extremely low. My annual property tax here was, I think it was $600, about $50 a month. So since I paid cash for the land from the refi, so I still owned the building, I just pulled some of that equity out, bought the land, didn't have to make any payments. There was no bank involved, so no interest. And all I had to do was pay $50 a month just to hold it. And I did that for a long period of time. And, we were in no position at that point to start building another home. So we just sat on it. But here's where the psychology shifts. Once I owned the land, the motivation went through the roof. I could see progress working. I could stand in that dirt and pick it up and let it fall through my fingers into the wind and go, this is our dirt. We own this. And it just changes something inside. It's hard to describe. I could picture the life that we wanted to build. In fact, I've got an image of where we would come up here on my off-road Jeep, and drive up. We'd kind of had to cut some tree branches to get it up to where we kind of thought we might want to build. And we would camp there. In fact, we have like a little memorial just above the house here where that first camping trip was. And that just changed everything because we could visualize the view here. We were going, man, can you imagine if the back of our house having this view? And, it's kind of like your North Star. Once you have that North Star, every decision you make will take you either closer to it or away from it. And it gives you a really good compass reading on where to go. And this creates a lot of sacrifice. You have to be able to say no. A lot of my friends thought, oh, he's just so busy, he's just building his business. Yeah, I was on a mission. I'm kind of a little bit of a loner. I'm a people person, but I'm also very willing to say no. And I don't need to be surrounded by people all the time, because if you're building your dream and you want to do it quickly, you're going to have to become a little bit of a recluse because you're grinding, you're planning, you're just constantly working this plan. And you're just not available to do a lot of things with your friends. And that could be thought of as a sacrifice, or it could just be your lifestyle. There'll be plenty of time for hanging out with friends out on the balcony of your beautiful home someday when you finally achieve your goal. But while I was back in the city planning, I always had this idea in the back of my head. I've got my building appreciating, my home in nearby there in California was appreciating, and the land was appreciating. So my equity was growing on three fronts, actually: the commercial building, the raw land in Utah, and in my business too, for that matter. So really four things. It was the commercial building, the house, the land in Utah, and my business were all appreciating. So my net worth was becoming more and more. And I like that when your money's working for you and all your hard work is paying you back. Now you're really starting to make some progress. So step 4 is nose to the grindstone, build for the exit. This is the step that a lot of people don't have the stomach for. And it's the one that makes the most difference. From the moment I bought the land, every business decision filtered through one question: is this moving me closer or further away? And that's where you just get in this habit. It's whether it's eating right, losing weight, building muscle, whatever it is that you're doing in your personal life to take care of your ultimate castle. It's very much the same way with your business. Every decision has to, you have to realistically gut check yourself and say, can I really afford to do this? Do I want to buy that nicer car? Do I want to go on a vacation to Europe or something and spend all that money on expensive hotels and airfare? And no, so I bought a Jeep and I said, we'll just go camping. We'll just make our hobby camping. It's inexpensive. We can do it on the weekends. I can take a long weekend. So all along, while we're saving and hoarding money really and living well beneath our means, I was building systems and documenting processes. I made the business run without me being there every day. And a lot of that was a reward for taking good care of my staff, always spending lots of time talking with them, making sure that our systems were very employee focused. And because the business didn't depend on me to be there every day, it was becoming more and more valuable to someone else. Because if your business relies on you being there every day, you're not really building a business that you can sell. You're just building a more complicated job for yourself with a lot of extra stress. Not everybody watching this video has an entrepreneurial drive, but you can do exactly what I'm saying, but you can do it working for somebody else. I'll get to that in a minute. So the world is changing rapidly when it comes to the trades in your favor. So when the time was right, I sold the company. And because I had built it to run independently, it had real value to the buyer. That capital from the sale, combined with all the equity from my properties and the appreciating land, gave me the financial foundation to build the homestead that you see in these videos. Step 5 is stack income streams. Selling the business wasn't the end. It was really just a transition. It was the end of one thing and the beginning of a new thing. And today, my wife and I own 3 homes here on this land. We were able to sort of in the process of building out this house, which we did in phases, the raw land, then the house, then later the barn and the solar. And then after that, we were able to buy the neighboring property and do the repairs necessary to rent that out. And that's a very popular Airbnb home right now. And I use a tech stack to run that. So it kind of runs itself, all the messaging with the guests, the connection to Airbnb and Verbo. It all runs through a program called HostAway. It's an online, I pay a subscription for that. And we also have all of our pricing set up through something called Price Labs. So it kind of just self-regulates itself. But we still go down there all the time. We do all the repairs. We'll do specific customer inquiries. I'll answer questions, a message with customer or guests that are coming in. But that got up and going. And then shortly thereafter, the neighbor down below was selling. And I had spoken to him a little bit in passing, and he said, look, I'll call you if I ever sell. And they did. And we were able to buy that house off market, and it came with a bunch of land. So we were able to go from 20 acres to, we had 60 acres because the tree house had 40, and then the one down below had 46. So we ended up with 106 acres and 2 homes. Our own home, so it's actually 3, but 2 other homes that are paid for, and that is recurring rent and revenue, and that sustains everything that we do here. On top of that, we own commercial properties. So the building that I bought and the house that I had in California, we sold all of that, and I did what's called a 1031 exchange, which is a tax-free way to go from one commercial property to another commercial property. I bought a distribution warehouse in Texas that has a national tenant, and it's triple net, meaning the tenant pretty much pays for everything. They pay the rent, they pay the property tax, they pay for repairs and maintenance, and even the insurance. So it's probably the most hands-off type of investment that you can make. And again, if you don't want to be an entrepreneur, you can amass, if you're very smart with your money, and buy investments on the side outside of your day-to-day job. And you can do the same thing. It's just a little bit of a different way of doing it. You won't have the capital that I was able to get from selling a business, but you can still, over time, amass more and more properties and build an entire empire of property ownership that you can cash out on to make your off-grid dreams come true. So there's multiple ways that you can do this. It's not just building a business, but I'm just sharing my perspective having built a business and exited. I do still work for the company that I sold, and I have equity in that company. So that's another, there's income stream there through dividends. So the key here is that no single income stream is carrying the whole load. So if one thing dips, if we kind of see a drop seasonally in our Airbnb, which is, it's been pretty booked even during winter, but you never know. There's fluctuations in the economy and people will cancel. Things happen, but financial resilience comes from being able to have multiple income streams. And so if one's dipping and one's peaking, then you don't really feel it that much. It's similar to the redundancy that you would have on your off-grid power system, for example. You've got your panels, you've also got your batteries, and you've got backup generator or a grid tie that you can rely on. So if something's not working, you have ways to keep everything running while you're doing repairs or while the grid is being fixed and hopefully will come back up. You don't just rely on one thing, you stack them. Same with your investments and your multiple income streams. So it keeps you more comfortable so that while you're working your off-grid ranch or homestead, you have reliable streams of income. Now, before we get to the final segment, if this content is resonating with you, consider subscribing, and I'd love to have you follow along. We cover all the off-grid stuff, also the real estate passive income aspect of our lives, and just the overall building of a self-reliant lifestyle here. That's what this channel is all about. So we'd love to have you join us on future videos. Now, this path took me well over 20 years to build. Really, it was a better part of 30 years, although the first 10 of that was just sort of fumbling around, not very organized. One thing I know for certain is that the tools available to you right now are better than anything that I had. I mean, AI can be used to write a business plan in an afternoon, but I definitely wouldn't take that first business plan, challenge it, ask how it's coming up with its assumptions, fine tune it over time. AI doesn't lose its memory. It will remember right where you left off. You can always come back to it, augment and build your plan, something that's realistic and attainable, but a little bit lofty, so you have to reach for it. If you don't know who Mike Rowe is, consider Googling him. Mike Rowe, R-O-W-E. He's he's the dirty jobs guy, but he's sort of a hero to the blue collar class. I think he's been advocating for, how successful you can be in the trades and how many jobs out there are unfilled in the trades. And I watch every interview he's ever done. He's all over the news now, especially because the demand for skilled technicians, plumbers, electricians, linemen, data center techs, for example, are going through the roof. In fact, Jeff Bezos, the Amazon creator, is building trade schools because the tech industry is panicking due to the lack of hands-on skilled workers. And some electricians are making $200,000 or $300,000 a year right now, and it's like Major League Baseball recruitment. It's insane the amount that they're paid to get someone that can come in and help them build this. I mean, Elon Musk's got his Terafab project. This is a massive undertaking. They're going to need concrete guys and steel workers and electricians, and every single construction trade is going to be very difficult for them to fill all the positions to create these lofty goals. And yes, they may be building robots that will do some of this someday, but we're not there yet. So right now is a really good opportunity to get in, learn a trade, do what I did, and go with hat in hand to every company that does that type of work and ask for a job and be willing to sweep floors and clean toilets if you have to. Because remember, they don't owe you anything, and you're low skill and you don't mean anything to them, but they will hire you for your personality and your determination, your work ethic. And then you will learn the trade and become much more, powerful in your negotiations with any future company, and your income will go up and up. And you can also, during this whole time while you're in school learning in the real world, getting that muscle memory, working for another company and watching those journeymen and learning from them, you can also be taking every dime of your income and building your side hustle and your real estate investment portfolio, or whatever you want to invest in, whether it's Bitcoin or the stock market, whatever you're building, invest in something. So save your money and start building, or save your money to start your own company if you're an entrepreneur. You're going to need lots of startup capital. If you're like me, I didn't have any capital. I didn't have a silver spoon. I didn't have anybody to give me any money to start any of the stuff that I did. I just built it all in the exact way that I'm explaining it to you right now. And if you're not a tradesperson, there's lots of really interesting remote work you can do. There's lots of ways you can work this plan. But the formula really hasn't changed. Whatever lights you up, gets you excited, whatever skill it is that you kind of have a natural propensity to, learn the skill, build the business or invest in a side hustle, acquire real estate, plan your exit, stack your income streams, and the timeline to execute that can be significantly shorter than mine was if you used AI and other tools that are available to you today that I didn't have. So I started with nothing, no money, no connections, no plan, just a willingness to work and the discipline to follow a process. And now you have something that I didn't, and that's this blueprint. You're watching it right now. Be sure to drop a comment below and let me know what step you're on. And if you haven't started yet, that's okay. But I'd love to hear your story and what it is that you're aspiring to do. I read every single comment, and a lot of other people read the comments too. So this is a small community of people, like-minded people that are wanting to get off grid, and it takes a lot of resources to be able to do that. So everything you contribute in the comments helps others as well. And if you like this video, you may also like my origin story, which I mentioned earlier. I'll drop that right here.